Hi there guys, in this video I want to cover something that I don't normally do, as I've been looking into a dust shroud for my angle grinder. Now what I wanted is to find one that I could use a hoover to suck away the dust, because indoors I can't use water. So this HERZO Guard, as I believe, will fit onto 4 and 5 inch grinders. You can put 115 or 125mm discs into it. Like I said, so let's have a look inside the box and see what we get included. So first we get the actual dust extraction guard. The hoover attachment is up the top here, and you can rotate it around 360 degrees. Obviously this depends on your application. You may need to move it in different positions. On the left here we have our depth guard, or depth position. It's marked all the way up to 32mm, as I just about, if you can see that. So this will allow you to cut up to a certain depth. On the reverse we have our clamp, so this clamps around the angle grinder and makes sure the guard doesn't fall off. Alright, so on to the next item we get, which is a pinion spanner, which is a little bit unusual as most angle grinders will have this included by default. My angle grinder doesn't actually use that spanner at all, so it's different. Next we have a spacer. So this is a spacer to move the disc a bit away from the angle grinder's guard, because otherwise it's a little bit too close. Next we have some spacers that go around the holder of the angle grinder. I did forget to show you one of those, as there are actually 4 included. So you can see there's a thick one here, a medium sized one, there's a thinner one which isn't there, and a very thin one here which is made out of metal. These depends which angle grinder you got, which one you might need, but they've included all of them just in case. And finally we got a little wing nut thing which goes on the reverse side. And the last thing we get included is a 115mm disc, which is a little bit unusual considering the guard's marked for 125mm discs. But anyway, you get one of those included. It is actually a diamond disc. Okay, let's actually try and fit it on to our angle grinder. In this one I'm going to be using a DCG414. This is a Dewalt cordless 54 volt angle grinder. For the Americans it's a 60 volt. So to fit it on, we first take these nuts off and the flange, and we've got to get this guard off. So obviously just move the little lever around and rotate it round, it should come off. So that's that bit removed. Keep that safe because you will need that later for other things. So the next thing we need to get off is the little locking latch that's on there. So for this we're going to need a torque bit, I believe, and we need to unscrew it here. Don't worry, it does go on fairly easy. It can take a little bit time to put back on when you don't know what you're doing, but after you get to familiarise with how you put it back on, it isn't that difficult. There's nothing that flies off or anything, but keep those 2 bits safe. Obviously this depends on what angle grinder you're using. Next we need the little collet thing that goes around it. So you can see this one is too big and just won't fit. So let's try the smaller one, which I forgot to show you earlier. So this one here, see, it fits very well. And next we need to actually install the guard, so that's very easy. If we get the guard and just slide it over it. Now the important bit, which is quite difficult to show and do on camera, is to put this guard on fairly level. As you can see, if it's off by an angle like that, it's going to make the disc at a weird angle. So if it's like I said, take your time doing this bit. It's not too tricky at all, it's just very difficult on camera to show you that. So I would suggest that at this stage is take your time and make sure you get this guard in fairly straight, because if it is at an angle your disc could hit it, especially if you use the 125mm disc. And like I said, it isn't too bad actually without the camera, it's just like I said, the camera makes it more trickier. So just when you're happy is to screw it up, but again you don't need to screw it too hard, it's only meant to hold the guard on. So if you screw it too hard you could actually damage the collet bit. And like I said, keep checking it as you do it. This now does look okay, you can see it's in fairly alright. So the next thing we want to do is to put the actual disc on. So for this you don't want to use this spacer, as if you see it will kind of be sloppy and it won't fit on properly. That could mean your disc will vibrate and cause a lot of problems, so take that off. Take your normal actual bracket and slide it in. So this is of the actual normal thing, and it's slotted on this angle grinder, so it will fit down, and you can see it locking much better. Next we want to take the spacer and stick that on top of it. Like I said, this just moves the disc a little bit further away, not by a lot, but it just makes it more central of the actual guard. In this example I'm going to use a 125mm disc, as like I said, you want the full cutting depth. So as we're using a 125mm disc, the clearances are pretty tight. This is why you want to make sure you've got the guard on properly, because like I said, there isn't much tolerance. So like I said, if you get it a little bit skew with, you could find the disc hits the thing. I would highly suggest checking it before you run the actual angle grinder, just to make sure it's clear. Next we want to actually put the locking nut on and tighten it up. I'm not going to fully tighten this up because I'm going to remove it in a minute. Just purely wanted to show you how it fits on and how you can actually put 125mm disc in. So there we go, that's the dust extraction fitted onto a DCG414. Like I said, this extractor was a lot cheaper than some of the alternatives out there. Whilst it may not be the best, it will do the job. As you can just see, it's spinning okay. So let's remove the guard and put it back to how it was. So to remove it, it's pretty much do the same thing in reverse. So let's take the locking nut off first. That means we can get the disc out. Like I said, you may need to move the guard about to actually get the things out, because obviously this is a pretty tight guard for that. So that's our disc out. Let's take our spacer and our flange thing out, which is being a little bit tricky. Okay, there it goes. So then we want to actually remove it, so let's just undo these two screws. So with those screws undone, you can pretty much just wiggle it off. Then you want to take the collet bit off, and then you're pretty much back to how it was. Now on this angle grinder you need to put this guard catch in here, which can be a little bit fiddly. This is nothing to do with the guard's fault, this is down to the angle grinder itself. So obviously this step is nothing to do with the guard itself, this is to do with the angle grinder, which can be a little bit fiddly. But just a little bit of perseverance and it will go back on. So this is just typical this angle grinder. Once you've got that on, you can just stick the guard back on as normal and use it as a standard angle grinder. So all in all, the guard is very good value for money. Some of the alternatives out there can be very expensive, and a lot of them don't even say if they're compatible or not. You can use it if you're using this at maximum depth of 32mm. What I can suggest is you leave it out like that and leave that nut untightened, so when you push against the wall this will come down. This is just to keep it a little bit better actual seal. The only other thing is this is plastic here, which is a little bit of a shame, but the plastic is fairly thick. Here you can see there's a dust sort of port here. This allows the air to travel from this area up. I believe if they were to cover that over, you might have trouble sucking through the underside, especially if it's hard against the wall. So in all, this is a very good buy. So I highly recommend that guard if you're looking for a dust extraction. Anyway guys, take care and have fun out there.